joining us on the Future of Event Marketing series. I'm here with Tahira Alexandra, and she is the events manager for Quick Mobile. Quick Mobile is the pioneer in event technology. And I'm also very excited to announce that Tahira was just named by MQA as one of the top 5 women in event technology. So really excited to have her here, learn everything that we can learn from her in a short period of time. But she's been in this industry a long time. And yeah, Tahira, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you've been in the events industry for your entire career. I'm most curious to see what have been the biggest shifts that you've seen in how events are viewed, not just within the events industry, but as part of a greater marketing strategy.
Well, there's so many studies now that show the power of live event marketing to boost brand awareness and to influence the buying decisions. So we really have seen a shift in spend from traditional media to using events more holistically because they work. So when you have that authentic touch point with a brand or a person representing a brand, you're way more inclined to purchase and influence purchase decisions for that product or service. So we're definitely we've seen statistics anywhere from 16 to 21% of event marketing spend going towards live events. And I think that's why they recognize that what people are looking for is connection.
Oh, sorry, put myself on mute. But yeah, that definitely, so that brings up a good point about connection, because even when I'm walking down the street, walking from the metro to the office, or, again, in events, the whole heads down society. I mean, Quick Mobile creates mobile event apps that engages, informs, and connects attendees. But when we're all so heads down, yet we're supposed to be interacting, how do we reconcile that? And can those two work together? Can we still be an integrated, community while constantly potentially looking at whatever technology we have in our hand?
Yes, absolutely. We have to be. I mean, this is the new way. So online and offline simply has to work together. And Forrester Research has done a ton of work around this. So, they have a couple of books, one about digital disruption, one about the mobile mind shift. But really, we have moved to a place where, they say that people are looking at their phones 14 to 150 times a day. And we all do that. So, well, that's a vast range. But so we expect now our ability to be informed and our ability to connect and engage with people now really is driven by that device that's in our hands. And everything is available at the touch of a button. So when we look at putting in mobile, so if we want to engage, using tools such as polls, which allow presenters to interact and gain information about the audience to steer their presentations, that's going to help people feel more engaged and connected to the presentation. To do things like taking pictures and sharing them in a gallery makes us feel more connected to each other with shared memories and shared experiences at the event. And so when you can, engage through those positive shared experiences, those are the things that make you want to return the next year and to bring your friends, and then if we look at informing, learning is obviously a huge part of why we attend events. So the ability to do things like offer second screen information, so whether that's documents or live Q&A and speak out styles of, where people can literally microblog their thoughts about the event while it's happening. Those all allow ideas to be shared within the event and to inform in ways that are contextual and also expanding the messages that the presenters are giving us. So it really is about also being able to take that information, and how often do you sit in a session and get an idea and, text it to someone or email it to someone or put it on social media. So it's about connecting the information that's being shared to our own situations, and that's really important. And is again done through that mobile device. So, and many of those functions are being done through the app. So, and then with connecting, we need to look at tools, well thought out gamification. So where it's defined and mapped back to the objectives, it allows people to do things like talk to each other and to introduce themselves in a comfortable way, because now, we've done a lot of things with gamification, in the last year, where it's about taking a picture with someone, or it's about scanning a code, but don't just scan a code, meet that person. And, quite often after you've met someone, generally if you're at an event, you've made an effort to want to connect with people. But it's hard if you're just standing in a buffet line or even in a bar line to like turn around and be like, hi, I'm Tahira, who are you? But if I turn around and say, hi, Alexandra, can I scan your badge? Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, it's given me an opportunity to start a conversation with you. So that's, we can connect in that way. In-app messaging allows us to connect with people ahead of time and during the event and post-event in a very non-intrusive way. And one of the things that we've been doing that is it's a heads down thing to start, but is as you open up your app, there's a like-minded survey. So the planner decides what are going to be the things people most often have in common. And you can ask questions around that. You choose the things that you're most interested in. And now you start to get a list populated of other people who share that interest. So we're really seeing that the online and offline, not only does it have to connect, but that we have some really, great tools to make that happen. So I think that it is just the new reality. So let's make it work.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the like-mindedness, kind of like you might be in an event of 5,000 or 10,000 people and feel a little bit isolated. But all of a sudden, when you see that there's this, as Seth Godin would call it, like this tribe of people that are all kind of interested in the same thing, you all of a sudden feel, it's strange, feel even more connected because of technology. That makes me also kind of want to ask you, since that's such an interesting way of using an event app, what are some ways that you're seeing clients that are kind of looking at their 2016 events or beyond that? What are some really cool ways that they might be using their event app for kind of better engagement?
Well, I think we're using all of those things. So we're using, smarter gamification. So, one of the things about gamification, if you're using it properly, is that it has to be, something, first of all, that's voluntary, and that has some really clear rules and goals and good feedback loops. And when you have good feedback loops, what that does is it lets people continue to engage and continue to be part of, various conversations. We're definitely seeing like-minded coming more into the forefront, which I think is really great. And the live Q&A is an amazingly popular tool because it allows people to have a voice if they're not comfortable standing up and asking a question. Yeah. So those are really the key tools that we're seeing being used.
Yep. Speaking of clients, like a lot of the clients that you see now and you've seen kind of over the last 5 or 10 years, are the conversations that you're having with them about events, are those changing, and are their requirements changing? What are they, focusing on now?
Well, today's event app, first of all, the customer is much more informed. So at the beginning, we really, you started out having to explain just what an app was. So not anymore. So now what we have to do really is work through the differentiators between what we offer versus our many, many competitors. I mean, for us, we were first into the space, and now there's, 300 companies at all kinds of price points offering what is, essentially a relatively similar service. So it's become more of a commodity, like a hotel room or caterer or audiovisual. So, and people are understanding it more. So the requirements are becoming definitely more defined. And really, for us, it's about having the conversations that are going to drive the clarity of the final product. So, we have a platform that has over 45 standard components. Can you imagine opening up an app with 45 components? It would be terrible.
Absolutely not.
So what you really want,
I'm using it.
Yeah, it would be awful. So what you really want is to choose between 9 and 15 components and configure the app so that it's really specific and mapped back to their objectives. So for me, what I was finding was there was a lot of conversations I was having that were really driven by what a specific vendor had told someone. And so what we did to respond to that was we worked with the Convention Industry Council and with Mariella McIlwraith, who is the executive editor of the new CMP manual, the CIC 9th edition. And we developed a 10-hour mobile app certificate program that's vendor agnostic and maps back to the CMP domains and looks at how do you use a mobile app around your stakeholder engagement, around meeting design, financial, a whole bunch of different, how are you using it to increase your marketing in future years? So really map to the domains and really looked at the why, not just the who should you choose at all, but how do you choose and why do you choose components and how are you mapping them back to your objectives in your meeting design. So it's pretty interesting. I think when you start to look at it in a more holistic way versus what has typically happened, which is, relatively close to your event, you're like, oh, and now we need a mobile app. Whereas, if you start from the beginning of the process, you can really create a much more interesting and dynamic experience. And we are at a place now where I haven't been to an event in over a year where it's not above 85% adoption, if not up to 120%. So as people download on multiple devices. So we're in a different place.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible that there's that kind of demand. And I mean, I see it in pretty much whether it be a music festival or a conference or whatever, if there's, not kind of that mobile app component, I wonder what's going on here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On the, when thinking about kind of what the clients and customers are asking for, like what place do you see data in shaping really the future of event marketing?
Oh, the data question is a good question. So one of the things, of course, every conference that we've been to basically is data is on every single agenda, but we're still not doing it well. So that's our biggest challenge. So when we start to look at, if you look at anyone who's ever made, and if you've ever made an online purchase of anything, or you've booked online travel, it's happening already. So they're taking what they know about us and they're taking that data and they are 100% driving how we're marketed to. I was booking a flight last week. And as I'm booking the flight, and do you need a hotel? And do you need a car rental? And would you like to buy any show tickets? So imagine if we started doing that with our events, where people start to sign in for their events, and now we start to ask them questions that are making sense based on what we know about them. Oh, I see you live in Des Moines, Iowa. There's not a lot of flights coming out of Des Moines coming to our destination, so here's some great options for you. How cool would that be, right? So, you book a ticket and ask you to share it on social media and influence your friends to attend. That's been obviously incredibly successful, and people, that is, as you know, the biggest reason that we buy or attend something is because we have friends who are going, other than, a few Uber fans in the world. So, what if we were booking in the event and at that time people can order their swag? So instead of us giving away water bottles, what if people were ordering their water bottles or their t-shirts? And getting them ahead of time even and wearing them and sharing that. So, when we start to look at the possibilities for the future, data is amazing. But on site, what we're really starting to do is to use the data that we have to do things like alter traffic patterns through our shows, to monitor CEU credits, to even do things, and this is, some of the things that you guys are doing really cool stuff with, how to personalize with data on site. So ultimately what data is doing is they're starting to give us, not only the technical data, how did people download, where did they download, what were our adoption rates, those kinds of things, but we're really starting to look at how are people being informed and engaging with it. And, we can start to be better at tracking, and we can start to be better at listening to what they're saying, and seeing who's engaged, then, we start to see incredible possibilities. We saw last year we did an event where normally after the event they would be marketing to all of the non-members who attended the event, but which was about 500. But what they did instead was they looked at the data and they said, who are the top 50 people who most engaged with us, who answered our surveys, who was busy with us on social, who seems to be engaged in what we're doing as an association. Let's talk to those people and see if we can get them engaged in our association. So, that's important. I think that there's, we're starting to see more and more companies coming out, like Bear Analytics and Rain Focus are the two we're seeing at all the industry conferences now. And what they're doing is taking the reams of data that we have from registration and from mobile that's a bit messy usually, cleaning it up and starting to aggregate the information that we have and to paint a more accurate picture of who's attending, why they're attending, what they're seeing, what's going to attract them back next year. There's just so many things. We see with, people seem to think, anecdotally, I can go to an event and be like, oh, I always see the same people. This must be really popular. But if it's a 4,000 person event and I'm seeing the same 30 people, what's the demographics of who else is attending and how often are they returning? It's that kind of information that we can really start to collect. And with mobile, it's your real-time information. It's what's happening right now. Where are people moving? Where are they going? We can heat map what's happening in a city now or in a convention center. What's really drawing people is important. And what are they saying on social? What pictures are they sharing? All of those things become part of our whole story.
Yeah, I really like what you were talking about, two places that I have thought about, but I think that you really like hit the nail on the head with the contextual aspect of it. You're coming from Des Moines, not just gathering the data and, putting it into nice reports, but okay, how can we make the experience better because we do have this information on you? And then the segmenting part of, okay, who, after the event, who were the 50 people that were most engaged? And those people are going to want to hear from you differently. And potentially more than people who are not quite as engaged. So it's in digital marketing, we never think of like email blasts anymore. Everything is all the way down to the segments based on their behaviors and what they've done in the past, and knowing who they are. So I think that those are two really important pieces that you hit on there. As far as, I'm sure you work with a lot of event marketers. When you think about the future of the industry, what sort of skill sets do those people who really get it, what kind of skill sets do they possess?
Well, we need to now understand the new digital reality. That we need to understand how metrics work, and we need to be able to read our dashboards, all things that are not part of a standard, skill set. They're not something that we learn necessarily at school. So, there's a lot of course, variations in event marketers, those who are designing the strategy, those who are designing, the actual environments, and those who are going to focus on the metrics behind the message. And it's really going to be about finding that blend. Your smart event marketer of the future needs to really dig a lot deeper into the strategy and not just worry about, am I making something pretty? Am I making something interactive? What does interactive mean? Interactive means nothing if you don't really understand who the audience is that they're trying to drive. So, looking at the available data, looking at, how you can build an event to meet the pain points and the challenges for people and to get them excited about what you're delivering to them. So whether that's a product or a service or ideas or knowledge, that you're sharing. So, we used to have to understand color and lighting and design. Now we need to understand neuroscience and data and how to deliver experiences that are memorable, that create an emotional response that tells the brand story. So whatever that brand is.
Yeah, how do you feel about using words like ROI? Like, is that something that you steer away from, or are you on
No,
board with
I
that?
think that ROI is an important word, but you need to understand what the return is that you're looking for. So just use the word as a big flashy three-letter acronym makes no sense. So what is your actual investment? And what are your measurable KPIs? Like, what are your key performance indicators that are going to tell you that you got that return? And is that return, what are the hard and soft returns that you're looking for?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In the past, and a lot of kind of what we've seen is a lot of brands and companies who are B2C having big flashy events. So I'm talking kind of outside of conferences. How are you seeing B2B companies utilize events successfully?
Ooh,
And how are they
this is
measuring
a
that?
it's a great question, because I think that, the reality, like we said at the beginning, is that the power of face-to-face events is real. So we crave emotional connections with the places that we work, the brands we support, and the companies that we do business with. So whether we're looking at something, on a B2B, whether we're looking at an internal employee event to motivate and enhance our teamwork, or really encourage or incentivize people, or if it's a larger scaled, event, there's so many B2B events that we're doing. So, but the purpose is always to positively connect with our existing and potential customers, and really by doing that through both a well-planned and a well-executed event. So when we start to look at measurements, that can come from things like impressions, from numbers such as number of people, from our soft measures, surveys, post-event. Did they actually remember who sponsored the event? That's important, right? So did they have conversations? Did they meet somebody and then click through and get more information, directly from their website? Was there social media engagement between the companies? And or the representatives on site. So, and ultimately it's about, if you do a B2B event, would you do business with them? So ultimately, if you're a business, you need more business. So, sort of in one word, it's leads. So success can be measured on your leads generated, or soft measures, is because we see this all the time. We go to a lot of trade shows, and it's a question of, how many hard leads do you have where you can put them into a nurture campaign, you can follow up. I mean, that's always part of your business cycle. But it's also how many relationships were you able to deepen because you had a face-to-face conversation with them that you weren't able to have? And did that face-to-face conversation start because you were standing face-to-face, or because you were on social media together and now are at a tweet up, or because you sent an in-app message to say, Alexandra, I see you're here, I'd love to meet you. I've seen your name on a few things, or whatever it might be, right? So, and then it's also about, who are you? For me, I have this whole theory that if you're going to face-to-face B2B events in particular, what you really want to be looking for is the ability to have intelligent conversations with like-minded people. So that's a really difficult thing to measure, but that's also what's going to move our industry forward, and any industry forward. So when we start to use events successfully, it's about not just sitting people down in a room and shoving information at them. It's about using our devices to get them to interact with us, and about creating enough space around those presentations for people to have conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So $1 million question. I think we're probably all asking, all of us that are interviewing are asking everyone, if you could, crystal ball 2 or 3 of the biggest changes in the event marketing industry over the next few years, what would those 2 or 3 things be?
Well, really, what we're going to be seeing is the continued drive for experience, plus substance, plus positive surprises, I think, is going to be the differentiator. So that kind of surprise that literally just makes you laugh out loud because you're so happy to have seen whatever that happens to be. Because those are the things that connect you with a brand. When you see whether it's a great entertainment piece or a great way that something is activated, and those are the kinds of things that they're so difficult to actually plan, but they're so important that we do plan them. And it's things like, if you look at, one of it's with Molson Canadians taking a beer fridge around the world, and the only way that you can access it is to put in a Canadian passport. Well, how cool is that? And if you're now a Canadian and you happen to be like in a square in, Amsterdam, and you get the Canadian beer, but then share it with somebody, that's cool. And that makes you want to go back to Canada and drink Molson Canadian beer. So whereas you might have perhaps been leaning towards a craft beer, but now you've had this amazing experience and interacted with the brand in a way that makes you laugh out loud, so things like that. Really, there's an expectation that optimized information is going to be available on our devices. And so for us, figuring out how to do that, and how to give people information when they want it and how they want it, is going to continue to be really important. And we're going to be able to get, you should be able to get all of your details, register for your event, tell your friends, and once you're there, be able to interact, not only in meaningful social ways, but also from a merchandising and food and beverage perspective, and this really applies to festivals, is how can we start to interact in a cashless environment, which offers safer alternatives for people. I think that's going to be, we're going to start to see more and more of that with Apple Wallet and Google Pay and all of those things. That will become important. And then imagine, for me, this is the things that I really love, are things like, if I'm walking up to a buffet, and I'm allergic to nuts, so I would love if, as I'm walking up to a buffet, a location sensor tells me, oh, Tahira, when you go to this buffet, just avoid the spinach salad and the fish with pine nuts. Everything else is safe. How cool would that be, right? So, for all of our gluten-free, lactose intolerance, things like that. I love the idea that we could do different things with music. So right now we have silent discos, so you've got your headphones on and there's a couple DJs playing different things. And if you've never seen a silent disco, it's a make you laugh out loud experience, because you're having so much fun dancing. And when you're dancing, you're not really talking to other people that much anyhow. So who cares what music you're listening to? But imagine now if, instead of streaming onto those headphones only 2 different things, we're now streaming through our devices, and you can have any music that you want and be dancing to it. So it's sort of that ultimate personalization experience. Or maybe it's not 2 DJs, maybe it's you have 10 stations to choose from. So, right. It's really about that. And then it's also about how are we going to find ways to really extend our conversations. So we're starting to see a lot more community thinking around websites and apps and associations where it's really extending the conversation more deeply and far beyond just the 2 or 3 days that you're at an event. And this is going to, I think, continue to be reflected. I think social is going to remain really strong. The channels may change or shift a little bit. We're already seeing that. I have 2 teenagers, so they communicate in ways that are very different than the ways that I communicate on a daily basis. I just looked at my kids' 2,342 text messages this month.
Oh my gosh.
So that just makes me feel sort of tired. Then I looked at mine, and mine was probably around 500. So obviously it's still a way that I'm communicating, but not as extensively. So, and that's just a different way that's just really how things are shifting. So I think that, we need to continue to respond. We see a lot of things about generations and the shifts that are happening. I think the reality is we are now dealing with, a 5-generation context for every event that we're doing potentially. So starting to understand the different ways that people communicate and respond to that, and understanding that it's not just millennials and Generation Z who are using these mobile devices. I was in a coffee shop and I hear a conversation behind me, and when I come in, I'd sort of noticed that there was a group of guys in bike shorts. They'd obviously been out biking that morning, and and then I hear them talking about, they had like a Map My Ride sort of app. And so they were looking at, where they'd gone, and then they were like, these are all my past routes, and like, oh man, you need to get on this app, because then, we could like be talking, comparing our rides. And then when I turned around to leave, everybody at that table was retired. So that's our new reality, is everybody's using apps for a whole variety of things, and we need to figure out how to best tap into that.
Absolutely. Well, Tahira, thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your insights. And congratulations again on being named one of the top 5 women in event tech. Very well deserved. And yes, thank you again. And
thanks for having me.
To having you on another one of these. So
I'm sure we still have things we need to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.